Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Beacon, a home for those who have a passion for filmmaking and the unusual. The Haunted Hinsdale House. Those who walk there do not walk alone. Paraware, apparel for the action-seeking paranormal investigator. Dragonfly art and soul for all of your magical, metaphysical, and spiritual needs. Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, the paranormal, and so much more. Niagara, one of the top rated destinations in Western New York. The Black Cat Lounge is part of the Paraflix Entertainment Network. Everybody, Tim Shaw here. Thank you so much for sharing your evening with me. You know, a lot of people will go and say, you know, Tim, I got better things to do. And I have to say, yes, you do. And that's why we put this on other channels and other outlets, because we don't want you to miss anything. And tonight is one of those episodes that I don't want you to miss. Before we bring our guest on, let me just say that everything that's going on in the U.S. and actually in the world, we all have to take a little breather. We all have to take a little breath. They have to do a little step back. And then let's send out some positive energy, because too many people are getting overwhelmed. Too many people are really, they're getting bombarded by negativity and all the news and everything. And everybody's hating each other. And there's so much going on. So why don't we all, when we get a chance, just take a little step back and say, we're going to make it. We're going to do good. We're going to do it. Okay, that's enough of our metaphysical moment. Anyway, I want to bring our guest on. And the reason why I went and I booked her was the fact that I got a chance to find out that she is more than just a paranormal investigator and a podcaster. She is a therapist. And I love the fact of that, because there's so many of us out there that we talk to talk. And first of all, you guys all know I don't hide that I go to a therapist, and I don't hide that, the importance of mental health, especially within the metaphysical and the occult and the paranormal fields. It's very, 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 very important. Well, I actually found her on I don't know what they call it, a reel on TikTok. And I was like, wow, I kind of was blown away. So I did a little bit more research, and I found her podcast on YouTube, and I listened to him, and I thought, this is great. She is perfect. She is the perfect person that I want to go, and I want to pick her brain about certain things that are going on out there. And in the paranormal field, it's very important that we all understand that if you should believe in the afterlife, and if you should so believe in the spiritual realm, spiritualists always say you don't change that much when you pass over. So it's important to understand the human condition and how the mind works, because I don't feel that the mind changes. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I want to welcome a podcaster, a fellow Western New Yorker, a therapist, and a paranormal investigator. Please welcome Ms. Brett Harpp. Brett, how are you? Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Hey, thank you so much, Tim. So good to see you and meet you finally.
Oh, I know. You know what? It's amazing, because people come up to me and say, what is it about Western New York? There's so many good people that come out of there, the investigators, the psychics and all that. And it almost seems like this area in Western New York is like a hotbed for it. And I used to think, oh, it was because it was Lilydale and all that. But I don't know. I think that we're really blessed because we've got really great people.
Yeah. And who knows, it could be some kind of ley line situation going on underneath the surface, right? And we are blessed. We don't have too much to worry about here. The snow we've all figured out by now how to handle, so maybe
Yes,
because we're not in survival mode, we get to drop into the extra curricular activities, if you will, which
I
people
think so.
definitely do here.
But you know what? The other thing is that you talked about ley lines.
Yeah.
One of your shows, you talked about dowsing. You know, I'm a dowser. I love dowsing. I absolutely love dowsing. One of these days, we'll have to go out and we'll have to test that theory. We'll have to look and see if we can figure out some ley lines. Because I know I used to belong to an organization that investigated Hinsdale at the Hinsdale House when Flo Mishnik was still alive. And they found some interesting things out there. So maybe we should go and organize an expedition of dowsers and see what we can find.
Okay, twist my arm. I guess let's do it. We'll set it up later.
I love that. I love that. You know what? For some backstory. I always like backstory because I'm so interested in how people got involved in paranormal investigations and metaphysics and everything like that. I mean, be honest with you. I'll just come right out and say, you seem like an almost normal person. I'll say almost normal, and in the most positive way, So how did you get involved with,
Yeah.
invest paranormal?
I did not have a spooky childhood. I know most people say that was their origins, although more and more as I'm looking back at it, I'm like, well, that happened. Like when I was in bed when I was like 6 or 7, an orb that I saw with my eyes dove
Hmm.
under the covers with me and disappeared, which I didn't think about that for decades until, now I started thinking about these things. So I'm sure there were things here and there, but I more grew up spiritual. My parents hand built a log cabin in Northern California when I was born.
Wow. Wow.
My dad's a Vietnam vet, so he had his PTSD struggles, and they were, it was more of like the spiritualism and earth spirits and things like that, the whole West Coast kind of vibe, and then came back here and grew up here. Um, but I think I was more interested in like what's beyond the beyond. Like even again as a kid, I would think like, well, what does that mean? What is forever? What's at the end of the universe? What do you mean there's no end? So it's more things like that. So then fast forward to being in private practice in my therapy practice, the building that I'm in is haunted. It's the first time I've ever experienced something like this where the office, I have clients who are psychic who will see things in the office with us, and they've been
Wow.
they've been fully cleared for any mental health, symptomology that could be causing that. Other offices in this building will hear things and see things. So I don't know, that just really piqued my interest as it would.
Well, I don't blame you because this is something that, a lot of times when I talk to therapists and I talk to other professionals, they're like, I have to be a skeptic. I can't allow myself to be open enough to even consider that in the abstract, which always amazes me when they say that. And yet here you are going, you know, okay, wait a minute. Let's do the short list. Let's do that short list here. Okay, you
Yeah.
seem okay. Okay, so you seem genuine. Was it
Yeah.
something that was it something that really one thing that really kind of turns you towards like, okay, now this is real. We're talking hardcore.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of having evidence that you can't debunk, right? And enough
Hmm.
people witnessing it too. But for me also, I notice that I work with a lot of trauma survivors. I do
Hmm.
I'm EMDR certified and things like that. And I notice that I speak a lot in metaphor, especially with that type of client, because metaphor helps to bypass kind of the frontal lobe, the guard at the gate, and get back into
Hmm.
this guy back here, the amygdala where the trauma lives, whether they notice that or not, like the subconscious can understand metaphor even better. And I noticed that all of my metaphors seem to be haunted. Like I talk about that trauma is a ghost that pops up in our nervous system without us expecting it. And,
Hmm.
your own mind sometimes can be a haunted house and things like that. So I
Which I
noticed that.
love.
Yeah,
I absolutely love
so
that.
true.
It is. It is. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, because I just get excited when
Yeah, I
when you're
get
hitting on
excited
different
too.
different
We're both
aspects
gonna
that
light on
I
fire.
so believe in. I so believe in these things.
Yeah, and then I noticed too, just personally, the other thing that was happening concurrently is that in my therapeutic sessions, I started to become more and more psychic, which I wasn't expecting.
Hmm.
And I think it's because of the nature of sitting across from somebody as they're in their truth and authenticity. And I'm listening at a level that, like, I'm taking in all the words, but I'm also listening past the words,
Right.
right? And really taking in their soul and what they're saying and what they're not saying. So I started noticing that I would know what they were going to say before they said it. Even things like a client bought a new house and they were explaining the layout, and I knew what she was going to say and where it was. And then because I have some clients who are sensitive, sometimes if they bring it up, obviously I'm not going to bring it up because that's not why they're there. Like, hey, did you
Right.
know that, your Aunt Millie is next to you right now? Like, I'm not just going to all of a sudden pop in with that. But if there's a comfortability there and I know that they already are awake in that way. Like recently I told a client, I'm like, gosh, did your grandmother who had recently passed bake cookies, like Italian cookies, pizzelles? I'm like, because my mouth is filled with a pizzelle right now. And she's like, oh my God, my grandmother had a cookie business. So it's things like that where I'm like, okay, as skeptical as I am, something's going on. And I'm locked into it.
I love it because of the fact that I have found that so many people that actually work with the public in this capacity, especially in some kind of a caretaker capacity, are highly clairsentient, that clear feeling. And I find that they get stronger the longer that they're either in their profession or they're doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And I love, first of all, I love when people come up to me and say, I'm as psychic as a rock. And none of us are as psychic as a rock, because let's face it, it's all part of that survival thing that when we were all hunter-gatherers there and running, roaming through
Yep.
Africa, heading up to Europe, we needed that in order to survive. And that's
Yeah.
why we still have that. And people don't get that. So oftentimes I have to ask you, oftentimes you are a person who is taught boundaries. Therapists have like these great boundaries.
Oh, totally.
I love, when
Yeah.
I talk to my therapist, it's like, she goes, okay, well, these are the boundaries that we work with, and this and that. She explains them all to me, and it seems as almost it's like you've actually you've had training. A lot of people, a lot of mediums, a lot of psychics, they are okay, but they're not really point on. They're not spot on because they don't have that training. They don't have that laser point focus.
Mhm.
Do you feel that because of your training as a therapist, that it enables you to have both the boundaries, but that laser point focus that you need in order to pull it in?
Mhm. I never looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right because I have a container around me. So I'm not just free floating, shooting out energy every which way. I'm
Right.
contained, which is super important to help regulate the client's nervous system so that they could be free, before they can learn to have a container. I can be that kind of like holding space for
Right.
them, holding that safe space. So right, so the more grounded you are in the physical realm, or even just
Hmm.
like look at when we meditate, you want to put your feet flat on the ground and ground. So right, that's kind of indicative of being able to stay grounded, and then because of that, spirit can probably pour in at a greater
It,
clip. I would think. I don't know.
well, I think no, I'm a firm believer, especially because, I've taken Reiki training to master teacher level, and that is one of the big things that you learn. It's like that grounding is so important, and being able to let everything, that energy flow through you. Okay, here's opinion time. Opinion time. what do you think spirit and ghosts really are? And let me just throw out real quick. I'm at odds with my own religion because they teach one thing, and I'm through experience, I've kind of felt that other things have been going on. And I'm a person, I don't believe in heaven, I don't believe in hell, I don't believe in angels, I don't believe in demons, but I believe in energy, and I believe in energy, the survival of energetic souls. So, what, in your opinion, do you think, and you know, whatever it is, what in your opinion do you think that spirits actually are?
I think for me, first, always is the idea of a multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
So always that first, I would consider that there's something coming in from a different realm that's seeping in, or a different speed of light, if you will,
Right.
that's existing in this room, like right next to me. Not so much a person that used to be alive, but more likely,
Mm-hmm.
a time slip of some. It could even be somebody from the future. It could even be somebody who's astral projecting from California right now into
Yes.
my office, and I'm like, "Jesus, I saw you for a second there." So that's where I go first, but I absolutely think too, maybe, I don't know, I hope that it's also people who have passed. I don't know.
Well, I
There
love the
it
fact
seems
that
to
you
be.
think it's that you've covered the interdimensional aspects of it because of the fact we don't know. As a kid, I was taught, or I was taught, that thoughts are things, and if things are vibrational in nature, it only makes sense because we are vibrational beings that we're able to go and ascertain this stuff. And you know, when we look at physics, basic physics, the slower something vibrates, the easier it is to ascertain. The quicker it is, it's the harder it is to
Yes.
see it. Or and and I think that is so important because people, first of all, we don't know, but second of all, when we start talking about astral projection, what are you doing? You are vibrating at a different speed. You are going and altering your state of consciousness, and you are free flowing. And if you've ever done it, it's a great thing because your whole body feels like it feels like it actually feels like it actually like seesaws out of you. And that's pretty cool. It's also the same way as if you work with isolation boxes. I mean, I worked with for about a year with a Sitara, one of the very first Sitara isolation boxes from California, and it was the same thing where you would go and it felt like your inner being would just leave your body, and
Which is the opposite of being contained, like we were
yeah,
talking about earlier.
yeah,
So, which is interesting that you have to abandon the container in order to see, other realms, which makes sense. But there's
exactly,
different tools for different jobs.
yeah. But also another thing is when we leave. I mean, how many times? Well, I don't know how many times. I'm older, so I mean, I've witnessed death a little bit, more. How many times when somebody breathes their last moments,
Mm.
things will go and things will brighten up. One of our a funeral director, as a matter of fact, unfortunately he just passed not too long ago. He had said he went to a seniors, retirement home where a woman had gone and had passed, and when they went in there, it was like it got bright. It was like bulbs just lit up, and it was almost as if the spirit was released. And I often think to myself, that might be why, and that's why I call them energetic beings, because now the memory, the personality goes on and on and on. And we're talking with Brett Harpp today, and I have another question for you. We talk about trauma, and this is what piqued my interest when I was watching one of your podcasts about trauma and how it's linked in to mediums and psychics. Do you
Yes.
feel growing up, I saw a lot of the really good old timers. I'm going back to the 70s, when I was a kid. One of the old timers, they were heavy in addictions. They were very heavy. Like you could, now I think about it and you could tell that they had trauma. They went through things. You could tell that they were World War II veterans, or
Mm.
people that had really like gotten through the Depression. Is there a link? Do you think that there's a link between trauma, especially early trauma, and
Oh, yeah.
like psychic
Tim, I'm
abilities?
so glad you asked that, because that is the nature of my research going forward, is the link between early trauma and psychic abilities. There's such
Mhm.
a strong link there, and it's not just because I'm seeing it and witnessing it with my clients, but also my theory, and I'm not a neurologist, I'm just, a therapist,
Mhm.
but from my understanding, well, from my knowledge, trauma that happens before the age of 9, especially complex trauma, so things that are happening every day to a kid, and then they gotta go to
Right.
school or something. It changes the way that their brain's even able to learn at school, right? It interrupts the learning process, and because of that, depending on the severity of the trauma, it actually changes the lobes of the brain to an extent. Maybe not so much the size, but maybe a little bit, they start to flow together. So what my understanding, or my wondering is, if we're not so now we have a kid who's being traumatized, and they're not so
Right.
much, let's say, in the frontal lobe. Now they're going to go to this guy over here, whatever that one is, to try to escape from the trauma, or because this one's not as bulbous, so they're going to go to this
Mhm.
one to strengthen this one. Maybe this one contains the ability to be more psychic. Maybe this is the lobe of the brain that the rest of us don't normally use, and this one has psychic abilities. So they grow up having developed that region of the brain a little bit more, is what I'm thinking. It's kind of like if somebody loses eyesight, their hearing gets stronger, that
Correct.
whole
Yes.
phenomenon.
Yes. But it
So
makes it makes perfect sense. Now, let's put the caveat out there. Every psychic has not suffered,
yeah,
post is not suffering through
yeah,
post-traumatic stress right now. We know that,
1000%.
but trauma comes in different levels, and people don't really get that, because automatically when you say the word trauma, it is pablum fed into your psyche what you see on TV. You're seeing hardcore abuse, you're seeing beatings, you're seeing all this really nasty stuff. But trauma comes in quiet, sometimes quiet steps. So what may you and I may not consider as trauma, you may have someone who went through something that was like really altered the way they think and their whole perception of themselves.
Yes. Yes, I'm glad you said that, because especially with doing EMDR, if I'm setting up with a client to do that, and we're taking a trauma history, they always say, "Well, I wasn't being shot at or anything." And I'm like, "No,
Hmm.
no, no, it was a bad time." It's trauma is not so much about what happened to you, it's what you're carrying still and how you're carrying it. Like what
Exactly.
got lodged that needs to be dissolved and reprocessed. Absolutely.
Now let's go into working with the client. There are several. I think, see, I've stopped cleaning up, this is really a gross way of describing it, but I've stopped cleaning up after certain paranormal teams, and it's not so prevalent now as it was a decade ago. And I would get called in to go and try to work with somebody who a team went in there and said, "Ma'am, you have demons in this house." And then they get in their car and they drive away, and this poor person has to stay in the house. And it was heartbreaking to me. And and it's a multi-step process. You got to go in, you talk to them, you do your due diligence, you go and you got to re-educate them in the way how to rethink about things and how to face things. Now, how important is it to understand human nature and how to be able to go and talk to a client? Let's say you're a paranormal, you're a paranormal investigator. So at the end of everything, you do your presentation. This is what we get, and of course, inevitably, you're going to have the recorder that says "F you" or the recording that says "Get out" or
Get
something.
out.
You're going to get those.
Yeah.
How would you handle that? Speaking to this client, this poor client who is already like afraid to sleep
Traumatized
in the
by a
dark.
recent
Yeah.
Traumatized by a recent experience? Yeah, so
Yes.
that's interesting, and of course, always my therapist's answer, it's an occupational hazard, as always. It depends on the person, it depends on
Of
the
course.
case
Of
and what's
course.
going on. But generally speaking, right, like, it's all about meaning making. and how they're taking that experience and weaving it in to their narrative or their schema or the way that their worldview or their self view. So if it's not going to be empowering to them to say this is a fact that this happened, then we look at it from a more skeptical lens, and we look at it from, I try to nudge them that way. But if it is going to be empowering for them to say, no, this really happened, and thank you for hearing it, and thank you for validating it, then we rest in that kind of space. We only, as humans, have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. That's what we're working with at any given moment. So it's how you feel about something, what you're thinking about it, and what you're going to do about it. And those three are so interwoven and interconnected that if one isn't working, right, like maybe they feel powerless. So then we get in there with a behavior that makes them feel empowered. Or if they can't stop the thoughts and they're having trauma, so they're having flashbacks to it, we can do EMDR around it.
Correct. Yes.
Things like that.
And just for everybody who doesn't know what that is, would you just tell everybody what those initials stand for?
Yeah, so eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR. It works with the adaptive information processing center in the brain. Basically, all it is it's a way, it's using eye movements to ground and stay present in the moment while focusing on a traumatic memory. It's one of the top interventions for trauma. They use it at the VA, Department of Defense, all of those things. So the idea is that a traumatic memory gets lodged in the brain, it gets stuck, and it creates what I call a residual haunting. Right. So what we do with EMDR is we reprocess it and turn it into an intelligent haunting where we can now start drawing some information from it. Right. Like, what did this make you believe about yourself? What are you telling yourself about this? What would you prefer to believe about yourself? All of those things until finally it kind of gets exercised out of the system. And not so much that you forget it, it's just that it doesn't haunt you anymore. It doesn't take you over while you're,
Right.
waiting for your sandwich or something. You're not just
It's
like
sort of, it desensitizes you. And I mean, I've had to have that because of anxiety that I get. So it's like, so I understand that totally, because now I can look at certain things and not, and acknowledge it and just go on, where before it was like, oh, well, it's time for a pill, Tim. Let's go and sit in the corner for a while. But
yeah.
let me ask you this. This is something that I've always wondered about, because, and I don't want to, it's hard for me not to say broken people, but I have run into people who have really have had a tough go at life. And they get to a certain point where they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and they're functioning and they're out there in the world, and boom, all of a sudden now they're living in a haunted house. They get up, they sell the house, they move. The haunting follows them. Do you think that people who have suffered trauma seem to go and for whatever reason seem to attract these types of hauntings? And when I say hauntings, some people, it's not always negative in nature. Some people are afraid of Aunt Bessie coming to say hi, So do you think,
Right.
do you think that this is something that is indicative of someone who may have had some trauma, early on in life, and something that as paranormal investigators, we should be aware of?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think that it is important to make sure that you've worked hard to heal your demons or heal your wounds or heal your traumas or heal your ghosts before you go looking for more, ideally, or at least be aware of them and be aware of, certain touch points inside of yourself that if something scary bumps up against it, you might become more affected than somebody who doesn't have those same bruises internally. As far as, do I think that people who have experienced hauntings are more prone to more? That's fascinating.
Well, because, over the
That's a
years,
really interesting question.
I've
Like
been
attracts
called,
like.
well, that's exactly it. And that's the problem that I often run into when I'm trying to go again. we're cleaning up after somebody, we're cleaning up after a group that, and being a product of TV myself, unfortunately, reality TV, I see this in the content of different shows and that sort of thing, and the overuse of fear mongering by using, calling everything a demon or minions or something. And you have to go out there and you have to kind of like re-educate and then reinforce what they're doing, and then you start working with it from there in order to go and calm things down. This is the question. I've been dying to ask you this question. Because I remember this many years ago. We're going many, many years ago, probably before you were born. I remember someone saying that, and he was a deacon in a church. He said that mediums and psychics show hardcore schizophrenic tendencies or attributes. Do you think that perhaps all of us have a little bit of that within our own mental makeup?
I mean, he's speaking very generally. Like, there's people who have dissociative identity disorder, what used to be called multiple personality disorder, right? Which is very extreme, who have the same traits as somebody with something as innocuous as ADHD. Right. So there's always going to be overlap of symptomology, right? So like, sure, I heard something over there. So did my schizophrenic client. That doesn't mean that the person that heard it, who isn't presenting with the other 8-pronged, multifaceted factors for schizophrenia, has it, right? Like you have to qualify for all these different, and it has to hit at a specific age. Like schizophrenia only hits mid-30s, which is such an odd age for a mental health illness.
But when you think about it, over the years, if I went back and looked at my client list of places that I've been, residentials, I will say that the largest amount of false positives where these people claim X, Y, and Z, and I go out there and I'm like, there's nothing going on, are mid-30s going into, let's say, 42 to 45, maybe within that time frame. Older people, what am I saying? I'm old. Everybody else is younger than me. But within that time frame, I don't see anything like that. And like very seldom do I have anybody in their 20s that gets a hold of me and says, well, this is what we're experiencing, except when it comes to children, that's a little bit different. But that comes up, that's really interesting, because during that time period, that's really interesting.
And then, of course, you have to look at the environmental factors, and is there any substance use? And absolutely, we have to weed out all of these factors. Mold, gas leaks, whatever. But if somebody is presenting with these, like if a 9-year-old is like, then it's not schizophrenia.
I agree.
Could be something else, obviously, but yeah.
But yeah, there's so many. Now, okay, I have another. Not one of my personal questions, but when we start talking about, we're going to go, and I'm just going to say, people who start to over imagine. I don't know what the proper description is, but people who over imagine things within a location. And we talked a little bit earlier that people are starting out of the corner of their eye. They see something, and then all of a sudden it's like, by the time it registers objectively through the eye and gets into the lizard brain back there, it starts. They have they have a figure. They're everything in the house. They become hypersensitive. That's something else that I've run into, where people have become hypersensitive, where all of a sudden they'll look at me and say, did you hear that? And I'm thinking to myself, no, because why? I have tinnitus and I can't hear anything as is going on. And I didn't hear anything. And I'll ask somebody else to go, yeah, I heard a squeak or something, but they're overreacting. Do you think that that's also a sign sometimes of someone who is maybe a little bit unbalanced, maybe should sit down and really kind of figure out, maybe, talk to somebody, or actually figure out that they should kind of build a spirituality, and work with
Build
it in that aspect.
parameters around it. Yeah,
Yes, that's
like
thank
build
you.
some
Yes.
parameters around it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that where my brain went at first when you were telling this story is confirmation bias, which we're all privy to, right?
Right.
And excitability, which we're all privy to,
Yes.
especially in that type of environment. So I think a lot of it is just good old human confirmation bias. Like, I'm going to a haunted location, therefore I'm going to see haunted things, scary things, spooky things.
Yes.
So I think that's a lot of it. I think if somebody can't come down afterwards, then we have to look at what's going on in their life, or
Yes.
does it turn into an addiction, or are you using it to escape? That's why I think there needs to be more, and this is something else that I'm working on, are debriefing circles. Because every time I have gone on a paranormal investigation afterwards, we're all just like, okay, bye. That was fun. See you on the other side or something, instead of like, hey guys, let's gather around like they do
Right.
like in healthcare or something. Like, that was a lot. Did anybody experience something that they want to talk about? And that's something that I'm actually working with the Wildwood Sanitarium to start
I love
developing
them.
for people.
I love that
Oh my
place.
God, I love them so much.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do too. I haven't gotten a chance to get up there in a bit, but this summer I'm gonna make the effort to really go up there and get back
Yeah.
and investigate that, because I just think it's just an amazing.
Well,
It's an
you can
amazing.
come to
It's
one of my haunted healing groups that I'm going to do there and debrief some
well, yes.
people.
Well, let me know, and
And we'll do the dowsing too.
absolutely, absolutely. You just sold me on it already. That's all there is, Brad. I'm
Cool.
sold already.
My
Okay.
first victim.
I would even open up my wallet for you, and anybody that knows me knows that I don't open up my wallet for anybody. But
It's
I
that
really
Western New York connection.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Now let me ask you this about what do you think about locations that, and we kind of touched on it, are assumed to be haunted? Now, I will say that there are, in my experience, I call them sucker houses or sucker locations, where it almost feels as if the location can tell what you're already what you've studied about it and what you're expecting, and then when you get there, Hinsdale's one of those places. It gives you what you've expected. Do you think that these things are energetic in the way that they respond to you, or do you think that it's just because it's up here and you're expecting it, and now for whatever
Yeah,
reason you've set that intent and now you're looking for it and boom, there it is?
totally. Or it could be a third thing where it's symbiotic. And
Yes.
because we're expecting it, it's like, oh, you were expecting me. Great. I was expecting you too. And we do a little dance together with the haunted location. Like, it's symbiotic. The more that I radiate, the more that you will radiate, and then back and forth and back and forth. So why couldn't that be true of a haunted location? Because some of them do feel alive. Like
Yes.
they're people too, or
Yes.
deceased people.
Well, I see so many locations that just seem to be, it's like the old movie, The Haunting of Hill House, where there's this door that actually breathes. It looks like it breathes.
Yeah.
And to me, I've always thought about that when it came to these locations, because I believe that the imprint of emotions imprint in the geology, or the actual structure themselves. Do you think possibly that, as a psychic, or even most paranormal investigators are clairsentient? That's one thing I've noticed. Do you think that it's because when they go there, all of a sudden they pick up a little bit, and then your brain just kind of fills in the gaps? Because I know many times, matrixing is audio and video matrixing is probably one of the largest problems that we have in the paranormal field. Do you think that it's a combination where we walk into it like and expect it?
Well, the observer affects the observed, right? Like, isn't
Yeah.
that true? And isn't that a quantum physics thing? Like, you
Yes.
could be looking at something in a petri dish, and because it's being observed, it changes form, which feels very much like probably, what is a haunted location if not a petri dish full of energy? So,
Exactly.
yeah,
No, I agree with you 100%,
yeah,
because it's almost as if, now I first started going to the Hinsdale house, and I love the Hinsdale house because first of all, Dan Kless is a good friend of mine. But before he even bought it, I was going there in 2011, and it was slated to be bulldozed, and that's why we went in there to go and photograph it and video it. And we had like, I still can't believe some of the things that went on. Do you feel that perhaps, and we talked a little bit about ley lines, do you think it's a naturally occurring energy source that in some places, it's almost as if, like when you go to Europe and you start seeing where the churches are all in a line, and then you realize that that's where the pagan mounts were all in a line, and then it all went either into a central hub or aligned astronomically. Do you think that some of these locations will actually go and do that? And number two, you also talked about something that is really one of the first steps now into almost a possessive state, is obsession. The obsession with a location, and the obsession with with the actual, I'll just say, paranormal investigating. So
yeah, I think the ley lines thing is similar, right, to sacred geometry, I think, type deal, right? And I think that we've lost touch with that in our modern society completely. So of course, like, I think Hinsdale, I'm going there in 2 months. I went there on a public tour, but I remember being there and thinking that the outside was even more prolific with what I was feeling than the inside even. So what does a structure even have to do with anything? Because they don't need to be contained anymore. They've ultimately lost the biggest container. So yeah, I think that could be what's going on. Like we were talking earlier about like interdimensional beings, and maybe that's more prominent at different magnetic fields in the earth. And then what was your second question?
Well, I think you've already answered it, because it's what I find is that these locations seem to affect people on a mental level where they become obsessed with it.
Oh, yeah. Right. So let's see.
See, obsession is,
now we have to look at attachment, right? Like, so if speaking as a therapist, because I'm a haunted therapist, so I would be looking at attachment styles, and are there attachment wounds? Because if we're looking at a location as a person, in a sense, what is that providing for you? What is it about yourself that you really like about yourself that this location is bringing out in you? And if it's a problem, if you're spending all your money on that location, then let's find what else we could do that makes you feel that same way.
It's almost like a high. Again, using Hinsdale as an example, I have gone and even I've talked with like Nick Groff and a couple other people from the TV people that have filmed up there. It's almost as if it becomes so obsessive. And now when we start looking at stages of possession, going into possession, it used to start off with infestation, going into oppression, going into into a temporal possession thing. Well, now what I've seen is, because these people become so obsessed with a location, or by even using a recorder, I've seen that happen, where people become so obsessed with it, they're almost as if they're, and in possession, you have to give permission in order to be taken over. Same thing with if you do trance mediumship, it's works the same way. But I'm seeing that more and more, where people are like, I don't know what it is. I dreamt about that house last night. I don't know what it is. I feel like I have to be up there. They'll go up, they'll drive from Buffalo, the hour and a half, to drive up McMahon Road, sit there, and then turn around and go home, because they need that fixed. Do you think that obsession is something that we have to all watch out for in this field?
Yeah, for sure. Again, we have to be aware of our own almost like precognitive cognitions too. Like you have to really do a lot of psychodynamic work to find out what it is that's drawing you to these behavior. Remember, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. What is it that's prompting this behavior? What am I getting out of it? And what is it that I like about myself? Again, trying to bring it back to the container so that you know that you're still the one in control. And if you're going to choose to drive all that way and sit there, that's okay. Just own the choice. Understand that it's you, right? Like you have to try to reclaim your power. If they're feeling that they're doing it because they're feeling powerless or overtaken, then that's something that they need to reclaim for sure.
that's a huge thing, because the late Raymond Buckland taught me about, well, the whole thing is about protection, and that was the question I had with him. And he looked at me and he said, "So you believe, so you are.
Yeah.
Understand that you are in control of every spiritual matter in your life for as
Yes.
long as you breathe." And I run into people and I say to them, "Listen, before you go and you blame it on the house, it's got a magnet, or you're attuned to this in some way, own it." Own it and say, "Wait a minute, I just want to go up there. I just want
Yeah,
to see, I just want
exactly.
to, understand that you're in control of this, and that if you
Yeah.
don't want to go up there, you don't have to go and roll
Practice
some
going there
pennies."
in your mind. Practice
Yeah,
going there in your mind. So now all of a sudden, now you're practicing a new skill. You're practicing being able to astral project or whatever
and
that other thing.
visualize. Yeah,
Yeah, and visualize. And it's kinesiology. Whenever we can elicit a feeling in our body just by thinking of it, that's
yes,
kinesiology, and that's having power over the system and over your own mind. So work with it, lean into it. With anything that's an addiction, I say it's just a behavior mostly. I mean, some of it is biological,
hmm,
but treating it as a behavior, it's just muscle memory at this point, and lean into it, meet it where it's at, and
yes,
replace. Always with addiction, you want to look at what can I replace this with initially.
right. You could never.
Just
It
kind of
it's
wiggle free.
it works the same way in the basic modality and methodology of cleansing. You always you rid something, and you must fill the void. Otherwise, that addiction or that whatever comes back into you
What do you
or
want
into the
instead?
location.
Yes, what do you want instead? I love that you use that
Exactly.
comparison with cleansing. Yeah, you
Well, you
gotta
have to,
want
yeah.
something else instead for
Because
yourself.
so many people I used to get called in on a lot of different things. Now I'll consult. I'll tell you how to fix it, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to get in my car and drive to Sodas Point anymore up on the up on the in the Thousand Islands. People don't realize that you have to be careful with who you bring into your space,
Mm,
and people have to understand that everybody doesn't mesh with you and what your expectations are. And
yeah,
people need to understand that, there's 1,000 different ways of doing things, and none of them are wrong and none of them are right. But what do you expect? And always remember, and people need to go and understand that, you have to fill that void. You have to put something, you get rid of the negative. You go in for an operation, they take the tumor out. What do? They sew it up. They allow,
mm.
they allow everything to go and kind of go back into that space. And then they sew you up and then you heal from it. And people don't get that, it's what it
See, you
is.
speak in metaphors too.
See,
That's
hey,
that therapy showing.
you tell me about it. Listen. You have to
I
listen.
love
You
it.
have to have somebody that's like into Linda Blair floating around.
Oh,
I just got her autograph. I just let you know.
oh my
That's what I
god. Oh,
got.
that movie traumatized me. Speaking of
Yeah,
trauma.
well, you're not. Listen, you're not the only one. I only saw it about 7 times, and you know what? Every time was one of those things where my brain always goes to whenever I'm in a location, and things don't really rattle me that much. I mean, I got up at the Western Block in Lockport. I got pulled to the ground about a year or so ago, and it was the first time I ever got knocked to the ground in all these years I've been doing stuff. And I'm going to tell you what, the first couple seconds was Linda Blair's
That
face.
face, that
The
face.
face was in my head,
Oh,
and then it was like, oh, then I started laughing because it's like, oh, you finally got me, But it's the
you
fact that,
knew she would.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's only a matter of time.
coming.
It's only a matter of time. Now, Brett, how important is when we're talking? Well, first of all, let's go back to something that you were talking about debriefing.
Yeah.
I I'm lucky because I get a chance. My friend Heather owns the Western Block. I get a chance to go there. My friend Frank and John, we kind of work it's not a team, but we kind of work in this place. And we will go and we will do experiments, or we'll witness something, and then we go back and then we talk about it. We take breaks, we talk about it. And then we take it apart. Then then of course we're taking it and ripping it apart for like a week after. And if it's an EVP, I'm sending it out to a friend of mine to, hey, give me the hurts on this thing, But I think it's so important, especially if you have a multiple group of people, you have multiple people that actually witness the same phenomena. Let's say I was my wife and I were years ago, we're at Iron Island, and my tape recorder flew off a table. And my wife looked at me and I'm looking at her, and you're like, oh. And it was the fact that we could talk about it and say, oh,
Yes.
I don't know, and then it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, I think they carry them almost as burden pouches, and I think that doesn't help when we start looking logically at what happened.
Exactly. No, that's exactly why I think we should have paranormal debrief circles after we do an investigation together, to share the information and unburden yourself. And it helps to everybody is validating together, which is
Right.
another important. Who knows? It's maybe raising the energy. Maybe you'll get even more evidence without expecting to, as that's happening, because it's then the place, if the place is alive in a sense too, is also part of that confirmation.
Exactly. Quick question. We're starting to run out of time, which is like, I just hate this already, but to go along with that, pre-work, how much research do you feel that we should go in with? Now, when I was doing the TV gig thing, I was doing the psychic walkthroughs, right? So I had no idea where I was. I have no idea. They'd pick me up at a hotel. They'd put a blindfold on me, drive me around for a half hour, and put me, take me to some place, and then I'm supposed to read it. So in a normal investigation, I like to know what I'm walking into, and I'd like to know some of the history behind it. Yeah. And I've been around long enough not to be influenced by the history, but how much history do you think that the average paranormal investigator really needs to know about, let's say, the location or the client? Let's talk about, that.
Yeah. So you want to know what you're getting yourself into. Like, what is an archaeologist, when they go on a dig, they need to know what country they're going to and what bones they might find. But also, because of the nature of the paranormal investigation, you could be tainting your brain a little bit, so that now you have the confirmation bias going on. It might be experimentally, it might be most interesting to have like a group of 4 people know and one person doesn't. One person's a sleeper cell who's just like, oh, I just heard Jeffrey.
Or the opposite would be great too. For people that didn't know,
it's got to be some kind of scientific balance.
I think that would be great.
Yeah,
I think that'd be.
Yeah, that's a really good point,
Brett. Now we're getting close to the end of our little segment here, which is like heartbreaking. Would you come back on again so we can continue this conversation? Now, secondly,
I'm free that day.
Oh, perfect. Now let's just check. Is this where they can find you? YouTube, Haunted Therapist.
Is correct. That's me.
Tell everybody about your podcast and some of your upcoming, either adventures or perhaps those healing classes at Wildwood.
Yeah. So I'm at Haunted Therapist on all socials, the Haunted Therapist podcast on Spotify and YouTube. My whole spiel, my whole shtick is healing from haunts and the ghosts of traumas past. So that's the type of content that you'll find. That balance of paranormal and psychology. So yes, I'm working on doing more research on the connection between early trauma and psychic abilities, but also debriefing circles and healing from haunts groups, kind of like haunted therapy, if you will, groups that I'm going to work with the Wildwood Sanitarium on.
That's going to be fantastic.
Yeah,
Brett, thank you so much. Stick around for a couple seconds so I can thank you properly off the air. I appreciate you coming on. You know what? I was so thrilled when you said yes, because I had 1,001 questions. I wanted to pick your brain on so many different things. And it's so great. You're refreshing. And again, everybody, go listen to our podcast. Go check it out. I loved it. I mean, I do. It's one of those things that I think
Thank
that I think you guys will get something out of it. Because listen, if you sit there and you listen to me long enough, go listen to somebody that knows what they're talking about. Anyway,
Thanks,
I'll be back in a couple minutes, Brett.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
so much again.
Thank you.
And that's Brett Harpp. She is great, the Haunted Therapist. And I'm so thrilled that we had the time. It goes by so quickly when I have a great audience that they're asking really intelligent questions and I get a chance to learn. And that's what the whole idea is. Why do we do things? I do it to learn. I don't, those days of chasing fame and notoriety and all that, those days are gone. Those days are way gone. That ship, as my friend Barry Kling from the Kling brothers from Ghost Lab has said, that ship has sailed a long time ago. But I want to say to everybody, keep that childlike curiosity. Go and enjoy life. Figure out what you're doing. Don't get saddled in. And again, earlier on, I talked about how right now things are heavy. Do what we can to lighten it. Let's see if we can do something. Let's put it out there, because the collective intent is a huge vibration, and that collective intent can change the world. Guys, you've been listening here on the Black Cat Lounge. And where's the Black Cat Lounge? It's where the elite meet, next to the dumpster transfer station. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of my life. Take care, and we'll see you again next week.